Hey, welcome back to Sekulow. We are joined now by our Senior Counsel for Global Affairs, former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. And Secretary Pompeo, I want to go right to, you have an article up at aclj.org. It's called Now is the Time to Unleash American Energy, which, Lord knows, everybody listening to this broadcast would like to see that now. You wrote that high gas prices for American families, high cost of living and operating businesses due to ever-increasing inflation, the soaring fertilizer prices. I had a caller yesterday talking it was 200% and 300%. Increase in fertilizer prices for American farmers, devastating war in Ukraine. They're all difficult realities Americans are having to grapple with right now. But you argue that all could have been avoided. How could we have avoided it?
Jordan, some things just happen sometimes, but this one was foisted upon us by an administration that put the green climate agenda ahead of the American people. And so all the list of things you just ticked off, whether it's the cost to fill your car at the gas station or what will trickle through to food prices for chicken and beef and everything that depends on fertilizer that is basically natural gas in many instances. These are things that impact families across every economic strata all across the nation. And it happened because the Biden administration wanted to live in a fantasy land, a land where sunshine and wind were going to drive American energy. We know that's not affordable for most families. We know it doesn't actually deliver, and it created enormous risk to families all across the country. And we see what's happening in Europe today. This was a direct result of a choice made by the Biden administration. It's the tragedy that didn't have to be. These were political costs that are being driven through American families today, not ones that are a result of economic activity.
Yeah, and I want people to see it up at aclj.org, your piece. Now is the time to unleash American energy. It's up there at aclj.org. But we saw yesterday historically high inflation numbers, and you tweeted out, inflation is at its highest point in over 4 decades. This is a tax on the American people, especially families who are paying for Biden's failures. We can make things a lot better right now by embracing our domestic natural gas, oil, coal, and nuclear energy. When you look at those numbers yesterday, I mean, they were pretty shocking. We spent almost the entire broadcast going through these numbers and the stats there and really kind of what it would look like if those numbers continue for the American people. I mean, how dire to you do these numbers look? I mean, we hear it every single day on this broadcast. When we talk about that issue, we hear from people vast different issues, whether they're business owners or work at a company, big companies, small businesses. It's affecting everybody.
Jordan, it's everywhere. And my fear is it's going to get worse, that what we're seeing is just the tip of the iceberg. When you constrict the American economy in the way that they have, when you deny the simple things like fracking and producing American energy, you're going to see these costs just push through and continue to put a burden on American workers, American manufacturing companies, businesses, and the people who work in those places. You can fix this too. That's the good news. The Biden administration could reverse course. It could allow the Keystone Pipeline to be completed. It could stop these silly set of rules that are the ESG rules that cause people not to want to invest in the next generation of American affordable energy. Those are the kind of things that we did for 4 years in the Trump administration. We had low gas prices. People could afford to heat their homes. All the things that people had frankly come to take for granted for 4 years have now been upended because of this, the idea that Greta's got it right and the American people have it wrong. If we go back to the basics of how to build our economy, we'll let the good people of Pennsylvania and Texas and West Virginia and Kansas produce the energy for America that will make sure that American families can afford to do all the things that they've been able to do for all these years before the Biden administration upended it.
You know, the administration, though, Secretary Pompeo, they're just blaming Putin. It feels like when they did that and they came out ahead of those inflation numbers being released and they said, oh, this is the Putin inflation, this is all Putin's fault, that was it. They didn't say they're going to try to do anything. I mean, that's very concerning to our folks, the ACLJ, and our listeners, our supporters, when they just heard blame Putin, but no policy changes.
No, Jordan, that's right. They can't. They are stuck because the progressive ideology demands that you move away from these affordable energies. They're not interested in the American people or working Americans. They are interested in their progressive leftist ideology of climate change. That's their sole and singular focus. They, in fact, say, well, goodness, these high energy prices mean we should go to wind and solar even more quickly. Jordan, it just doesn't work. The math isn't there. The infrastructure isn't there. It's not possible to do that. The only solution, the only way to get these energy prices, and it's not just gas and heating. It's going to flow through the cost of your clothes, everything, the electricity that you use in your everyday life. This is going to drive through the entire American economy, and it's likely to generate a recession, which will, cause people to be out of work and all the tragedies that we saw in the 1970s. It feels like a repeat of what President Carter did to America. I pray that they the cooler heads inside the Biden administration, to the extent there are any, prevail, and they begin to reverse these disastrous policies.
Yeah, because that's what it feels like, Secretary Pompeo. It feels like this is actually kind of what they wanted to see in energy. I mean, they did reports on their Green New Deal, their studies, and they said, to get to where we need to be to get Americans more interested in electric cars and other sources of energy, oil will probably be at $100 a barrel. Well, here we go. And so it almost feels like, though they don't want to come right out and say it, this is what they want to feel this pain, so that we have to, as you said, invest in these other forms that are not going to be ready soon, are not even always viable, and they actually want us to be feeling this pain.
There's no doubt there are those in the progressive movement that view this disaster, the pain that families are feeling, they view it as opportunity. They view it as their window, this chance to ultimately achieve what they wanted, which is to convert America to this unaffordable energy source and then take down the American economy as a result of that. I don't think there's any doubt that there are some who believe it. They know inside their own organization. They know, because they know they've got to get this fuel to the market. They're demanding the Saudis produce it, the Venezuelans produce it, the Iranians produce it. They're going to thugs to produce the energy we could produce here at home in an attempt to at least bridge it and have it both ways. But the radical left most certainly believes that this is an opportunity, that the price you're paying at the gas pump, they see as a blessing to a greener, more climate-friendly world. It's unimaginable to me.
We know the Russian sanctions haven't really stopped the Russian global energy sales. We were kind of a standalone country in that. We've also seen the ruble recover. So as long as Russia, just switching there a bit, it keeps selling, but it all gets to the oil and gas issue too around the world. Is the move by the Biden administration actually hurting Americans more than Putin at this point, because we didn't get the buy-in from the international community?
I saw this for 4 years. When there are gaps left in sanctions, the bad guys will drive a truck through them. And the sanctions that the Biden administration put in place had big gaps. It had gaps with their financial services industry. We left some of the banks unsanctioned. It was just the United States that said, we'll stop buying Russian energy. The Europeans said, well, in a few months, we'll stop buying Russian coal. They buy very little. So, yes, Vladimir Putin is not feeling this. The ruble has not been impacted. That tells you that these sanctions have been ineffective because they've been incomplete. You have to make a decision if you're going to actually be serious about not only applying the sanctions but enforcing them. And to date, the Biden administration has not done that, and Americans are paying the price for it.
Secretary Pompeo, as always, it's great to have you on the ACLJ team as a senior counsel for global affairs. Folks, I want you to check out Secretary Pompeo's new piece up at aclj.org. Now is the time to unleash American energy. American energy. American energy. American energy. American energy.